Welcome back, everyone, to Arsenal Pass Time on the Round, episode 24. Today, we're joined by Jasin Long. Jasin is one of the most successful competitive Flesh and Blood players to date, with no less than 4xCalling top 8s. Jasin is infamous for his appearances on stream during the Auckland Calling 2021 Blitz Calling, piloting his OTK Kano in the field, and also giving us some of the most memorable events we've actually had on camera. Jasin, I don't know if you know this, but I've coined your nickname, and I think that it's stuck. You're going to be Jasin Pokerface Long, because nobody can read you. But anyway, Jasin, thank you so much for joining us. And how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm really good, Brendan. I'm really good. Thanks. How are you?
We're doing pretty well.
Good.
Yeah, I remember I commentated that Blitz Calling, and my favorite matches were definitely yours to watch. And I specifically still remember you won with the blue snapback, right?
Yeah.
Out of Arsenal? Yeah.
I mean, it was probably because the other matches you commentated on were like power mirrors, weren't they? Because it's
yeah. Okay, Kano Mirror was definitely my favorite as well.
Yeah.
That
was pretty good. It's like that whole the old lightning bolt at the top of the deck back in the days for Magic, right?
Yeah, the top deck bolt. Yeah, top deck snapback. Sit in the tank, find your tome lines. You know, it's all very similar, clearly. Jasin,
awesome.
We usually start with a lot of our guests and talk a little bit of your background to Flesh and Blood. So, you know, Brendan called it out in the intro. You have four calling top 8s, which a lot of people probably don't know, because you've been a bit quiet this year, but we'll talk about that. But just in terms of how you got into Flesh and Blood, tell us about it. How did you find out about the game? How did you decide to go to that first calling in Auckland?
Yeah, so I actually got into the game through some friends who knew James White back in the day when he used to run a whole bunch of Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments. So it was actually my mate Logan Boldham and Zach Olsen, Isaac Olsen, who were the first two that really got me involved in it. Logan was really keen to get the guys back together. We used to play a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh and cards back in the day, and taught us about this new game that was coming out. I was sort of like, oh yeah, this could be fun. We'll go up and we'll just sort of revisit our old not childhood but teenage years where we used to go to Auckland, you know, go around to the hire out like a backpackers, just go there and probably maybe make some events if we didn't drink too much the night before and have a bit of fun. So that was sort of really the first thing that drew me into it, was basically just getting back and playing some cards with friends again, which was pretty cool. So we went up to that calling event. Hadn't really played too much. We just did a few sort of, you know, sealeds and drafts the night before. Went to the event and somehow ended up making the top 8. And from there it was I sort of just really enjoyed the game. It was just such a fun, enjoyable, quite, you know, high skill cap game, and it really just appealed to me after that first event. And you know, it was also, there was a fair bit of money as well at the time. You know, there was good prizes then, and I basically just used that prize money pretty much to go and travel to the next calling, which was over in Australia. So went over there and caught up with Hayden, and somehow managed to make top 8 again. And it kind of just from there, it sort of just snowballed a little bit, and just started really getting into it, having a bit of fun, playing some card games, trying to work the game out, because, you know, back then no one really knew anything, and that to me was one of the real big appeals to the game back then, was not knowing what was good and what wasn't good, and just trying to work that out. And that was honestly the thing that I liked most about the game back then, really.
Yeah. One of my favorite facts, Jasin, is those first 2 limited callings, which were Welcome to Wraith Sealed into Welcome to Wraith Draft. You opened the same card in the top 8 of both of those events. You opened the Legendary. You opened Tectonic Plating in both those drafts and got swayed by the Legendary, by the glint in your eyes, and drafted, I would say, 2 pretty questionable decks off the back of that. Yeah,
I mean, both of those drafts, I did not want to play Guardian. I did not. I just hated Bravo. Like, it was the least favorite class out of all of the Welcome to Wraith heroes. And each of those drafts, I pick one, got a cold 4 Tectonic Plating. I was like, well, you know, maybe I'll play this card. It was actually real funny. The first calling, I didn't even know what it did. I didn't even really know how it worked. Like, I sort of thought actually that you activate it and it didn't have go again for some reason. So like, I'd never played the card before. So that was kind of funny. And then the second one, I drafted again, a real questionable deck. I really wanted to go Ninja again, go Katsu in that draft, and somehow pulled another one and managed to scrub out yet again with the Legendary.
And if you'd gone Katsu, you would have been the only Katsu drafter in that calling top 8. because famously that calling top 8 had no Katsu drafters. Had three people drafting Guardian, 4 people drafting Warrior, and or two people drafting Warrior, whatever it was, and 2 people drafting Brute. So no.
That's a very welcome to Wraith split, though. In the early days, people thought that Katsu sucked, which is funny. Yeah. I mean, some people obviously were on it, but I think that the general, like, if you looked at like the meta breakdowns back then, like the general consensus, and especially in sealed, was like people really thought Katsu was bad in sealed, and then not a lot of people drafted because they had, I guess, like almost no reps. I think visiting the format again later, Katsu's probably my favorite hero, and one of the ones I think is the easiest to force, which is funny.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of that was to do with the fact that people didn't really know how to play against Warrior, and so Warrior was really strong, and that was probably the worst matchup for Katsu. So there was a lot of Warrior players back then, I think, which kind of skewed that a little bit.
Yeah, people definitely forced it in sealed. On the back of that, Jason, just while we're talking about, me and Brendan, well, Brendan likes to refer to us as the Welcome to Wraith Boomers. You are definitely one of those, Jason. So what's your hot topic right now? What's your thoughts on Welcome to Wraith going out of print?
I mean, it's been around a long time. I feel like it probably is time for it to go out of print. It's been 24 months of Welcome to Wraith. I challenge you to find too many other card games that had a basic set in print for that long. And I think there's so much of that product out there now, and it sounds like Legend Story Studios are going to be reprinting a lot of the cards that people are most keen on, the most expensive cards. So I don't really have any issues with it, to be honest.
All right, well, there you go. There you have it, Jason. Jason's fine with it. He can't pull another tectonic plating in a pack one of a draft, but he's okay with it. He's fine with it. He'll move on. So, Jason, you have the 2 calling top 8s, right? The limited callings. You got Auckland, and you travel to Sydney. You pick up 2 gold tunics along the way. Very nice. And then there's the first ever constructor calling, right? Which is, I think, February of 2020 ends up being the first constructor calling. What do you play, and how does it go for you?
So yeah, in that first constructed event, I played Katsu, but traditionally a lot of Katsu decks were pretty mid-range back then. There was a fairly, they were just playing a lot of the good cards. They're playing all of the good defense reactions. They were playing, a lot more blues than what I was playing in my version of the deck, and they were more about just Kodachi, fire off like an E-Strike or fire off something. The deck that I played in that tournament was a lot more combo based. It ran 6 Razor Reflexes, which I think is probably the most Razor Reflexes in the deck that have ever been played. Actually, if you go look at my deck list, it's actually got 9. It says that I've got 6 red Razor Reflexes, which I would have really done, but I wasn't actually allowed to.
That'd be pretty good.
Yeah, that would be good. But anyway, so that was a really interesting tournament. That was sort of the first tournament where Sasha Markovic really brought home the Fatigue Ninja deck. And it just really punished a lot of those mid-range decks that were just on this kind of, I'm going to semi-grind you out and just play good cards plan. And he's like, well, I'm just going to wait till you run out of your good cards and then I'll win the game. So I actually think that my deck was probably had one of the better matchups against that version of the deck, because it was basically just, it just ran a lot of attack-based cards and was not as easy to fatigue. But I mean, that tournament was a really cool tournament. I really enjoyed that. I was happy with the deck that I played. I managed to make top 8 just, beating, I think I beat Jackie Pearson in the second to last of the last round to get there, which was pretty sweet. Pretty happy with that. Got a natural Mugenshi combo into a natural Mugenshi combo the turn after, which was pretty good against Bravo. So nice. It was pretty high variance, but it just happens sometimes. But yeah, no, it was a really, really awesome event, and it was sort of the first event where I felt people started to have a good understanding of the game, and that a lot of the good players really, the cream sort of went to the top of that particular event, and a lot of good players made top 8. It was really
did they? Because someone else was in that room from the 3 of us here. It wasn't me, but they didn't make top 8. So I mean, Brendan, you heard it here. But you 2 were in the same room. Did you 2 actually meet at that event? I don't know. You 2 were in the same room?
No. We did not. I definitely, I knew a deck he was playing, but I didn't meet him, or I didn't meet Jason. I didn't play against him. I actually lost to, so I lost to the same person that Sasha lost to, Mark, on a sort of aggressive kind of mid-range ninja deck. I think he might top 8 as well. And then I lost to Sasha in the mirror. So yeah. I kind of bubbled out there, but it's all good because I was happy to see the deck sort of make it, which is funny because that Yeah, that deck was I really enjoyed kind of innovating in that format and having that deck
Mm,
and having this big surprise. And I just
yeah.
there's nothing more in Flesh and Blood that I hate than fatigue nowadays.
I
Just,
tell you what, the only tournament I've won, and I hate to say it, but it was playing Fatigue Ninja, and I absolutely hated it. I will
Yeah.
never do it again.
I was about to bring that up. That road to nationals. That's a great story though, because Crucible
Uh,
drops, and then Jason goes, "What deck do I play?" Literally the weekend Crucible drops, and Isaac is like, "Just play Fatigue Ninja." And I'm like, "Yeah, just play Fatigue Ninja." No one will play. Like people will play so many Warrior because they want to play their Spoils of War and stuff.
yeah. Yeah, it was
Nobody's on
literally
Rhino, right?
a tournament full of Dash and Warrior players, and I was like, sweet, this is just a free roll to solve it.
Yeah, the Dash
Oh, sorry,
players.
not Dash, but Warriors. Yeah,
Yeah, for the Warriors. Oh, I think there was Dash, but they hadn't worked out like how good Purifier was yet, right?
yeah.
So you were good. You were good. But yeah, so obviously top 8 there. I actually, it's funny as well. I just wanted to say, Brendan, I actually got Jason on so that we have the two biggest proponents of Ninja and Ninja Control, Ninja Turtle on the planet in a call together, so we can record that. I just wanted people will love that Brendan gets some more chance to talk about Fatigue Ninja or Ninja Turtle if you drink up.
Yeah.
I actually despise that deck and the strategies that have spawned from it. Which I don't think will. I think they'll be hopefully become less and less a thing in Flesh and Blood. But I guess there's a sort of recency bias after coming out of a chain meta, and then also fatigue being a popular strategy versus Lightning Briar. We've seen a lot of fatigue in Flesh and Blood. Sometimes, I mean, most of the time, not to success, but sometimes, it does have its spot in the meta, which kind of hurts my soul.
Yeah, I mean, I actually don't mind it being the meta, and the main reason I say that is, like after that format, I guess my favorite like deck to play with and against was actually Chain against Fatigue, just because of how awesome that it feels to set up the bottom of your deck and just absolutely destroy them. And I feel like I just love that there's an aspect of this game that can be, that you can do, and I think it's something that's a bit unique. The fact that you can literally stack your deck legally in this game, and it adds a real skill element that I do like. But having said that, I also hate the fatigue mirrors. So
It's good to actually springboard off of that because, like Hayden said, and I'm sure we'll get into this more, is that you've kind of taken a break. So, what do you think about the evolution of Flesh and Blood as a game since you've kind of taken a step back? Because we have seen more variants, faster formats, and less relevance in the second cycle of the deck. Obviously, Chain was definitely an exception to that because he kind of turboed to that second cycle. If that is your favorite part of the game and you do find a lot of satisfaction from beating your opponents, from setting up your second cycle, reducing variance, and just kind of having this master plan, what do you think of the game in its current state where that has been significantly less relevant than it was in the past?
yeah, I mean, I think it's I guess that troubles me because that was again the best and the worst thing about Chain in my opinion was the fatigue matchup was just so good, but the Chain mirror was just so terrible because it's literally the exact opposite. You're just literally relying on variance the entire time, and whoever draws better just kind of wins. And that was if Legend Story Studios can come up with a way to remove that part of it but keep the second part, then that's where I'd love to see it go. But I don't know if they can do that very easily.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of this is some of the main reasons for it is like the premier decks in both Monarch and well, I guess you could call Tales of Aria. It's not totally finished yet, so we can't really close the book on it. But I would say that the premier decks were just hyper aggressive decks. So the meta really warped around that. And in Monarch, it was either you played like Fatigue into it, or you played another aggro deck that was either Chain or something else that was trying to race it, which was probably pretty tough most of the time. And then with Lightning Briar, there's more diversity in the meta, at least in the what was succeeding in the meta, right? Like there was a ton of Briar, but there's other decks succeeding, but still, Briar forced a lot of decks to not be able to get to the second cycle and just ultra proactive like Chain was.
You're forgetting one deck though. Like you do have this format where Old Time is a pretty viable deck and a pretty strong strategy, and that deck is cycling in that matchup sometimes. And we just we showed it on camera this week 4 or 5 times through its deck, right? So I do agree, but I do think this actually the meta we're in now post the Chain, post like the early sort of Tales of Aria meta feels a bit more diverse from that regard in terms of
I agree.
things seeing second cycle, etc. But I would, you know me, I complain about this enough. I want to see second cycle more because I think it's like one of the most sort of interesting things about Flesh and Blood is this idea of the second cycle, right? To Jason's point.
Yeah. I think if you take like it's interesting to get the perspective of a person that's kind of coming out of the time capsule of Welcome to Wraith and Crucible of War and be like, okay, put them immediately into this time period of Tales of Aria. And it's like the game feels much different, right? Like back in Crucible and especially Welcome to Wraith, it was we just didn't have as many tools, right? There was as many synergies, so it was very grindy.
Yeah. So saying that, right? So Jason, you finished that sort of that first season of Callings, and then the Constructor Calling, and then later that year, obviously it's COVID, but then post sort of COVID, New Zealand starts to get back some normality, and you have nationals. So I think one of two countries to actually get nationals in the first year of Flesh and Blood nationals. And I had the pleasure of testing with you and Isaac, the three of us, put our heads together, and I think came up with some pretty cool decks for that format. A Viscerai deck that never unfortunately saw the light of day. Because Isaac audible to the Ryan Isaac, which I actually think was in retrospect such a great choice. Just unfortunate with some of the pairings, but tell us about the deck that you played at New Zealand Nationals, and that event was pretty close, right? I think you were like 1 or 2 wins out of top 8.
Yeah, so I made top 16. I think I ended up 10th in that event, but I sort of went into the last round knowing I probably couldn't get there. But yeah, so I played Claw Rhino in that calling, and at that time, I don't think that particular deck was on anyone's radar, really. There was a lot of mid-range Rhino, there was a lot of Bravo, a lot of Dash, Warrior, some Ninja, and really we built that deck to beat this like Dash, mid-range Rhino, Bravo meta, because honestly, I felt that they had at least a 60 to 70, probably potentially even higher win rate against those decks. It was just so explosive on those turns, and there was just not a lot that they could do. You would be able to kill them from half their life total a lot of the time, and it was fairly consistent as well. So that was a really good tournament. Unfortunately, in that tournament, the only dash I played was my final round where I couldn't top 8. I made up for it though by getting a triple Blood Rush Bellow turn off, which Kiki always hates to bring up, but yeah, that was the only dash in that field that I played, which was really unfortunate. I really wanted to play quite a bit of that, and I think it was like 25 to 30% of the field too. So it was pretty unlucky. I also managed to, of course, get paired up against Isaac in about round 3, which was, again, really unfortunate. And the other losses I had, so I did face a ninja earlier on. Nick Anderson, who's a pretty good ninja player, lost to him early on, and at the very end, unfortunately, got beaten by John playing Warrior, which again is another sort of really close matchup. But yeah, it was another really good event, and I was really happy with the deck we chose. And to be honest, again, that was going back to the point I made earlier, that was the thing that I really loved about Flesh and Blood back then, was just being able to come up with decks that people hadn't really, went on at all, and really come and just surprise the field.
Yeah, that event. I mean, no one that event saw that deck coming. It was a claws deck that tried to combo Blood Rush Bellows, but also played Art of War to like turbo out those Blood Rush Bellows and make your attacks go wider. And yeah, like it was this kind of like semi combo aggro deck, right? Which now it's turned into just kind of the claws decks you see now, where mostly doesn't play Art of War, but at the time, like people just hadn't really seen that. Beast Within had just been printed, which was a pretty strong card. Massacre had just been printed. It allowed you to do these pretty silly turns, right? So yeah, I was glad that deck went out. I was gutted that you didn't quite make the top 8, but yeah, it was. I wish there was coverage so I could have seen the event as well.
Yeah. That was pretty cool event.
Yeah. So obviously have that, and then the next deck that you kind of, I guess, come up with, or like the strategy you come up with is there's a Blitz Calling, and at the national side event actually that you just played in, Kano wins the Blitz ProQuest to win a PTI, and the Blitz format starts to I guess come together. They have the Blitzathon that LSS do. If you've never seen this, LSS in their first year anniversary to this Blitzathon event where they got a bunch of players in New Zealand. Jason, I think you were there. Went up to Auckland and played against the devs in this big challenge, and that kind of started to, I guess, bring together this idea of the Blitz format, which had just been released at that time, late 2020 into early 2021. Kano and Ira, they're kind of like the two decks to beat, I guess. And then you head into this Blitz Calling in February, of this year. It's crazy to think that was this year. Like, it feels like it was a lifetime
That
ago.
was wild, actually. That's crazy.
Because of everything that's happened, and now the North American calling scene, and we've just had nationals, but yeah, that was this year. That was only 9 months ago that the Blitz Calling happened. So Jason, you go there, but you decide to take Kano, but not just regular Kano, right? Like, you have a bit of a strategy of how you want to beat the Iras, with Ira being probably the best deck in the format at the time.
Yeah, so that calling was probably, I've talked about a lot during a lot of events, but I think that was probably my favorite one. The preparation for that event was really good. We knew that going into it that Kano was a pretty good deck, and that the Ira matchup was a bit tricky with the traditional way that had been played out, and a lot of there was a fair bit of like warrior and stuff going around too. So it was quite a sort of almost rock paper scissors format where you had to be able to beat warriors, but you also had to be able to beat Iras, and it was quite a different game plan that you needed to have there. And I'd sort of heard, people people had talked about back in actually Arcane Rising days before Dash got really strong, that you could actually fatigue and you could fatigue OTK combo with Kano back then. And if you actually go back and look at some of the deck lists, it's quite interesting. Matt Rogers actually plays in some of them, like an Arenia's Prayer and stuff like that. And I believe it's because that he actually knew that was a potential counter to Dash. So it's actually quite interesting to go back and look at that. There's just some deck lists back then where that was done. But anyway, so I sort of heard about it back then, and basically that spawned the idea for me to just try and see if that was possible against Ira and Blitz. And it turned out it was, and it was especially good when they weren't on the more aggressive versions, which you see now. They sort of were running like sigils, and they were running less aggressive cards.
Null Rune 4 and
running Null Rune 4, no Snapdragons and stuff like that, because their game plan was pretty much to just fatigue them out. But and effectively, I just came up with a plan, which was a particular set of cards on the bottom of your deck. And when you play them in the correct sequence, you could guarantee deal 28 damage through Null Rune, and that was effectively the deck against Ira. And that was, I guess, the start of that particular project, was to just try and see if we could beat Ira with that. And turned out you could. And then the sort of caveat to that was you also still have to make sure your deck is good against Wizard and Warrior. And that was kind of like the balance of the deck, right? I could fill my deck with like Sunkiss and Sigil, and I'd probably 100% beat Ira every time, but you'd never beat Warrior with that, and you'd never beat the Mirror with that. So we sort of got on this going back to the tone plan, and we put in a few like niche kind of defense reaction cards, like there's your Unmovable Blue in there, and then also the Whisper of the Oracle, which just turbos you to the bottom of the deck faster. And then that's sort of what we decided to go on. We actually tweaked a few cards early on in the event, and that's what we played. And going into that event, I was actually really hyped for Dan in that event, because, as I've sort of talked about, I feel like I'm not that great of a card player. I feel like my success has mostly been attributed to understanding the game, like developing decks and coming up with good meta calls at the time. I mean, in the constructed format anyway, the early days of Welcome to Wraith Seal was just a bit weird. But yeah, so I was actually really hyped for Dan, and we both got really close to both making the top 8, which would have been awesome. Unfortunately, the way it played out, he made a couple of mistakes, got unlucky. I made a couple of mistakes and got lucky, and that was sort of it. That's how I made top 8, pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, you can. If you ever are looking for some Blitz matches and you want to watch, go and watch. You have to listen to me and Brendan, unfortunately, because we did commentary on that. So I apologize in advance. But you can go and watch Jason rack his mind and pull out almost all his hair, trying to work out how he can get his OTK combo off in the last round of Swiss, and I think in the top 8 as well. But that last round of Swiss, the blue snapback is pretty phenomenal in the mirror. So I think it's like second to last round of Swiss, and that 2021 Blitz Calling is actually pretty cool.
Yeah, it's important to note as well that the Ira deck that Jason was facing was different than probably what a lot of our listeners have actually played against, because this was the OG list that was running Dreaded Brutality, so it was a lot different. But yeah, it was very dominant in that tournament. There was so many Iras.
Yeah, I think the top 8 was literally 6 Ira, Jason on Kano, and a Warrior player. So Jason had the ticket, had the number, and Jason could have won that. Could have won that. I hate to bring it back up. Jason could have won that quarterfinal. Very close.
Well, I had the win. I just couldn't work out what the one of my deck was anymore.
Sequence. Yeah. It was tough. That was a long day.
Yeah. It was 13 rounds with delays.
Yeah.
So I'll blame it on.
Yeah. The old. This is also something that anybody who's playing nowadays is not used to. Is that callings used to be like 12, 15-hour events. They were ridiculous because the delays were. Oh my goodness.
That was round 13. I think you were playing at that point on the day. 14 even.
I think it was like 10 at night or something as well. I don't know. I can't remember what time it was.
Sounds about right. Yeah. But no, I mean that deck that you did play, it looks very different. I think that the call at that time for that event was like the perfect thing, right? Like people didn't really know that you would have a movable blue. They were like people just signed, like they were continuing to play Needle. They'd run Needle into your movable blues. You could then slow the game right down if they did try and be aggressive, and you could stack your deck and so on and so on. Like just a great call at the time. Obviously, I wouldn't be advocating people to go out and put a movable blue into their Canada decks now. Although maybe it would catch some people off guard if you did it for one event. But it might not be.
I mean, it was different times. It wouldn't work. It wouldn't work now. The thing that was quite good about it is we managed to keep it fairly secret from what everyone. No one really knew that was what we were doing going into the event. So that was quite important there as well.
So then you take a bit of a break, Jason. Not necessarily on purpose. There's the calling in June that I was there. You were there in Auckland. You've been to actually all the callings in the Southern Hemisphere. So it's not like you've just been not playing Fab, but there's been, I guess, less opportunity. I don't think you played any road to nationals, right? Just due to like busyness and how busy your life schedule is. Yeah,
well, I mean, my first child due at the end of the year, which has sort of changed my priorities a little bit. But I guess I did do 2 road to nationals, but I sort of didn't really. I had the opportunity to maybe try and grind for a nationals invite or use one of my PTIs, but I think it's probably worked out for the best because the timing's not really going to work out. But I did. So I did play two road to nationals, the ones that were going to be in Christchurch, but ended up being over Discord, like video or can play with, which sort of wasn't ideal, and ended up decided to play chain in those particular events and didn't quite get there. There was some interesting matchups I played up against and lost one of the mirrors. I think that was kind of one of the first weekends where that dash aggro deck was being brought out, and it wasn't something that I was familiar with. I lost. That was the 3 of my losses were to that deck in the weekend, and then the other one was to a mirror in the last round for a win. And then, it was. I haven't really played too much of that format since then, and I haven't really played much of Aria at all, to be honest.
Yeah. So in saying that, I know you just said you've got your first child due into this year. Again, congratulations. It's gonna be some sleepless nights, I'm sure. So January nationals isn't going to be on the cards for you, but heading into next year, you have I think the second most PTIs of anyone in Flesh and Blood. You have 4 PTIs, so you're basically set if you want to play the first year and a bit of professional events, worlds, pro tours. So what is your everyone? We got to know what's your plan. You're sitting there with 4 PTIs. Are you going to bank them and just take some time away from the game still, or are you planning to come back to the game sort of mid next year? Like, what does it look like for you?
I mean, honestly, I don't know. There's just so much stuff I've got going on at the moment that I really don't know. I would like to I haven't looked at all the dates or everything, but I would love to plan a trip over to the States and just because I imagine there'll be one there. But it kind of just depends as well on the exact locations and time. And to be honest, they may have released some more information on that. I haven't actually looked at it.
Don't worry, they haven't.
I didn't think so. So I guess it's sort of going to depend a bit on that, what the plan is, because I'd love to go and attend all of those events and probably play them all. But we'll just see what happens, I suppose. Anything could happen at this point.
You've got to be at the first Worlds though, right?
Probably. I mean, look, I'll be at the first Worlds. I don't think I could miss that particular event.
Right,
I think
locked in.
I mean, I don't know where it is. I don't know if I can get there. What if I'm locked down? I don't know.
No, it doesn't matter. No. I heard it's going to be in Hawaii.
Okay, all right. I'm sure I could swing the misses a trip to Hawaii. I think.
Not sure. I'm just making that up. Just to be clear, I haven't heard anything. I'm just making that up.
You're here first. It's in Hawaii.
But it could be. Well, good to hear. I guess in terms of I mean, that's the thing. Like you have these PTIs. It's not like you have to use them immediately, right? They're not for set events, which is the cool thing. I think about how at least how the PTI system is working at the moment is that, should life circumstances not allow you to play for the next 6 months, then you come back into the game 6 months down the track and use those PTIs for whichever events you like. Which is, I think it's a cool thing.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask about, we've talked about your history in Flesh and Blood and what that's looked like, your events and the decks that you've been influential in creating. We've got a new set that's about to drop, right? We've got Everfest coming very soon, just after New Zealand Nationals. As an OG Katsu and Kano player, are there things that you're hoping to see from Everfest? I know you haven't played as much Tales of Aria, but you've seen Tales of Aria. I know you've played a few armories and stuff since it's come out. But what about Everfest? What are you expecting? What do you want from Everfest? The all important question.
I guess, it's a hard one because I think that you could go kind of two ways, right? Like you could just increase the power level of everything, or you could print cards to try and make what everyone's doing currently harder to achieve. And like, for instance, they could print some sort of fairly heavy control card, which may restrict the ability to just only have reds in your deck, which is kind of what I see the Briar and even the chain decks doing at the moment. They're fairly aggressive without a lot of defensive blue cards, I guess you'd call them. But I think I would like to see a catch-up mechanic of some description where there were some powerful cards printed for the existing heroes to just give them an opportunity to shine at the moment, because it just feels like currently the power level of those two decks, Chain and Briar in particular, is pretty high, and there's not that much reason to play other heroes, in my opinion, at the moment.
You want something for your Katsu? You want something for your Kano? I know Brendan is hanging out for some wizard cards.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the meta currently, it feels like Wizard wouldn't need much for it to be a force in that. Like, you already look at Briar, and I imagine that they don't run a lot of blue cards. They're not going to be able to block a lot of arcane that you're firing off anyway. And to me, it wouldn't take much for them to increase the power level of that deck enough for that it could become something that's that could see the light of day again, I suppose.
Yeah, give you 3 more Sonic Booms and you might be on your way.
That'd be nice.
That would be good. That would be very nice.
So there's like a bit of people talk about Wizard, right? And there's this bit of like, it's not criticism, but it's like a fear that people have, right? Is that, or this thought process that if you raise the power level of Kano and Classic Constructors, so you give it a few tools to compete maybe and be a bit stronger, that you make it unbalanced in Blitz, right? Like it just becomes unstoppable in Blitz in the best deck. What do you guys think about that, Brendan? What do you think about that sort of like, I guess, critique that people have?
I mean, it's possible, right? But I'm okay if it was necessary to make the deck, I don't know, more viable. And this is theoretically, then I'd be okay with there being cards that were only legal in certain formats, like there is with Duskblade, although that's not ideal. But I don't think the Blitz is actually the issue. And I can't really say where my information source is on this, but I think from what I understand, the issue with Wizard is that, it does have a really funky position in the meta right now. Like your issue is less the decks that you're targeting, but all the decks that you're not. It's just hard to have really solid matchups into everything and be super consistent in an open field. But I've heard that there's a particular person at Legend Story Studios that no matter what cards come out, whether it's in Monarch or Tales of Aria, he just keeps winning with Wizards. So the theoretical power level on that class is just so high that it's hard to add more to it.
Interesting. Well, there you go. Well, did just win a Nationals, right? Did just win a Nationals. So
yeah, true.
There you go. All right, what else, Jason? What else are you looking for? So, you're talking about whether there's cards. You want some catch-up cards, right? Like you say, for I guess, Welcome to Wraith and Arcane Heroes in particular. What sort of cards could they look like? Are you talking about, just general power level of cards, or are you talking about really specific things that maybe work synergistically with mechanics already existing, or are you thinking new mechanics for these heroes?
I mean, I think I don't necessarily think they can. I mean, they could release a new mechanic, but I think that wouldn't be what I would. I don't expect them to do that. I suppose like a brand new mechanic for each class. They could do that, I guess. I mean, for Ninja, I suppose it would probably be another powerful like in-game combo line. I mean, you already have Lord of Wind, right? And the Mugenshi interaction, which is really strong. But the other combo lines, while they're good, they're nowhere near as good as that. And I think if you release another combo, like another potential combo line that worked, maybe with both, maybe with two of the starting combos, I don't know. Maybe there's one that's like, if you've played Rising Knee or Whelming Gust Wave, you can play this combo card, and it combos off either of those. Something like that could be very powerful, because it wouldn't matter what you start with at that point. You can always end on a really powerful on a combo. Something like that would be really good. I mean, for Wizards, I think it really needs another scaling card. I mean, you've got Fork Lightning and you've got Aether Flare, but I would really love another scaling mechanic, because I think that would really punish the aggro decks more. I mean, you think about Briar's worst nightmare is probably Aether Flare, right? It just can't block it, and then it just doubles your next attack. So if there's another of that type of card that is quite powerful and easy to, and is of a similar costing, I think that would be quite good in that matchup. In terms of what it might need for the slower matchups, I mean, yeah, it's quite an interesting thing, because if there was a way to more reliably get to the second stage of your deck as Kano, that would be quite interesting to print, because it would allow you to just work around those fatigue mechanics, those fatigue type decks, and get to the bottom and actually set up something that they can't just block through. I think that would be quite cool. Or again, they could just print something similar to Fork Lightning, where you just have it just buffs the damage enough that they can't just block it with four. For Nova, and I think either of those two, like some of those things there, would be quite beneficial for both those decks, I think.
Yeah. I love talking to Jason about theory on design of this game, because Jason has some of my favorite theories so far. And you actually, I remember when you were writing for Channel Fireball, you wrote a few articles like this, and I want you to share the story, because it's one of my favorites. So there was a discussion early on about what the strongest legendary was in Welcome to Wraith. And you and Isaac Olsen had a big disagreement. You thought it was Mask of Momentum, right? Well, he thought it was Mask of Momentum.
No, he thought it was Mask of Momentum, yeah.
And you thought it was Scabskin Leathers, right?
Yeah.
All right, you got to explain this to us. Which one is ultimately the strongest legendary in Welcome to Wraith, and how did you do this thought experiment? Because this went on for weeks, this thought experiment, right?
Well, yeah, it was quite interesting. So I just started randomly thinking about. It wasn't so much. It sort of morphed from Scabskin Leathers to if you would have an extra card in your hand. And it basically came down to, what would you prefer to have in a turn of Welcome to Wraith? Would you prefer an extra action point, or would you prefer another card in your hand? And I guess that was so. And then we just talked about this for a long period of time. We talked about a lot of decks. So my sort of thinking and argument around it was, for a deck like, say, Dorinthia, you can always use an extra action point to threaten your weapon swing, and it just completely changes the way that you can build that deck. You no longer need to put second action point cards in your deck. You can just fill it with strong attacks. A lot of the cards that are printed in Flesh and Blood currently are balanced around only having one action point. So cards like Snatch just become super broken if you always just have an extra action point. And I guess, funnily enough, you've now got the situation where you have Briar, who gets that
extra
turn. So
no longer a thought process. Yeah, they printed Go Again on a hero named Chain. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they like doing that, actually. Those go on demand Go Agains. So do you reckon we get 5 Intellect next?
I mean, we could.
Only if it's a Runeblade, right?
Only if it's only if it's not a Runeblade, please.
Oh yeah.
But you and Isaac played some games, right? Where you had an extra action point and Isaac had 5 cards, and you to play out your thought experiment.
Yeah, so we made some decks, and he ended up playing. He actually played a ninja deck, so it had Mask of Momentum and the extra card, and then I had played Dorinthia with an extra point. So that was kind of fun. It ended up being pretty close, but I think he did end up winning that game in the end. But it was a pretty cool experiment to just sort of see, and like that was it was a really interesting thought experiment. I think it was fairly even and balanced in the end, and it kind of makes sense if you think about a lot of the cards that are currently printed. A lot of them do just say gain an extra action point, and that particular effect is quite powerful.
Yeah, this is what if you have 5 cards, you can also play the extra action point if you want at some point play the lead the charge or whatever is your extra card. But these are the things that used to happen when there was not events to test for. The testing team would just dissolve into Yeah, but what if this thought experiment was true? What if Legends Story Studios did this, and then what if there was a combo? Your favorite one, the combo card that plays off of 2 starters, that's been going around for a long time. I remember you wrote an article about that as well. You're like, oh, what if it works this way? I think when you got the preview card, because you had maybe a preview card for like Rushing River or like Mind Center or one of those cards from Crucible, or you saw that card and then you're like, what if it works off like 2 combo lines?
Yeah.
Not to be.
Yeah, I think that would be very, very go a long way to making Katsu more consistent. I think, and that's potentially what it needs. The other thing I did, you may not have seen this particular article, but I was sort of talking about what would happen if they just printed a whole bunch of Ravenous Rebels and Art of War in a deck, and that's also kind of where we are now, which I thought was quite funny before Fire was released. So it's funny how some of the things that you think about and talk about ended up being getting brought into the game.
What was your conclusion if there was a deck full of Ravenous Rebels and Art of Wars?
Well, basically, I was just saying that that what was going to happen with the game when we got to that point, and that was kind of what the article was a little bit about. And I was like, we talk about where the metagame was currently, and I think it was definitely pre-Tails. Like it might have even been pre-Monarch. But it was basically just saying, we currently have some of these decks that are aggressive and they're running a lot of mediocre cards in an aggro deck. And now we're in a situation where there's not that many mediocre aggro cards, and you can just fill your deck with scaling and aggressive cards, and it's very difficult to just block that and fatigue it out because of the quality of your deck now.
There you go, a man ahead of his time. Saw it coming. There we go. All right. Well, I wanted to throw to Brendan, see if he wanted to, ask anything of Jason before we kind of wrap it up. Brendan.
Sure. So you said you haven't played much Tales, right? What do you think about the Tales of Aria format, and what do you think about Runeblade as a class? And when I talk about as a class, I talk about Runeblade is Flesh and Blood's experiment to push design, because we've seen the dominance of Runeblade, and I would argue that there's part of this that's not even, I don't know, publicly accepted by most of the players in the community, and that's that obviously Chain is very good in Monarch. Obviously, Briar was very good and is very good in Tails, but I also think that Viserai is like probably one of the best decks, if not the best deck in the format. So like all of the Runeblades have just been dominating for, I guess it's only like half a year, but it does feel like quite a while.
Yeah, I mean, I guess from my perspective, it hasn't actually been. If you look at the progression of the game, it hasn't been as long as people make it out to be. Just because a lot of people have only recently got onto the game in the past, probably 6 months or a year, right? So their whole life is just Runeblades. I think there's a bit of that that's going on. But you also got to, I think that was the sort of natural progression of the game anyway. That if you go back to what Welcome to Wraith and even Arcane Rising were meant to be about, it was meant to be about people learning how to play this game, because it is not that easy to pick up and just run with. And there was always going to, and even when Chain was at its peak in Monarch, my sort of thinking around then wasn't so much that, oh, this is so crap that my Katsu deck can no longer ever beat Chain anymore. I just always, the way I thought of it was that this is actually what the game is meant to be. The game is meant to be at a higher level than just Rhinar or Katsu just throwing some attacks at people. It was perhaps still too strong, and they did obviously make some changes because of it. But I feel like that's where the baseline of the game should be, is this sort of, you've got these perhaps some arcane which you might not be able to block, and you've got some attacks coming in, you've got to work out a way to get around it, and that's like the base level. And then going from there, other heroes have different interactions and different things going on that allow them to combat that in different ways, or get around it in different ways, or beat that particular strategy. So I mean, I don't necessarily have an issue with Runeblade's current dominance. I think it was kind of always going to get to that point. I just think that they probably, with the set coming out now, they're going to need to make some adjustments to bring everything back up to that kind of level.
Yeah,
give Bolton a chance.
Yeah,
give who a chance?
Give Bolton a chance.
Oh, I don't want Bolton to have a chance. What the?
I don't know. Just we don't talk about Bolton much, so I'm putting out putting out some support for the Bolton players out there.
I mean,
there's two different kinds of Bolton players. First of all, there's gentlemen, and then there's degenerates who run save. No, I'm kidding.
Oh,
But
yeah.
yeah, that deck is obviously that's a whole another can of worms. But as much as I dog on that deck, it's really important that it exists in Flesh and Blood because there is definitely a type of player that freaking loves that kind of play style, right? Like the combo and just
Yeah.
assembling some sort of Exodia that just runs over the opponent.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I like doing that as well, but I just like to do it on the second run of the deck.
Yeah, on the second cycle, right? That's what
You want to be big brained about it. You want to stack your Luminous Ascensions, and then you want to get back to it, and then you want to pull it off. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, just give me some kind of sort of card that opts 10 cards from the deck. That might be.
Oh, 10
Might be able
cards.
to get them.
One day.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, great. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Jason. I really hope to see you on the professional circuit in 2022, at least at Worlds, if you can make it. We'll be chilling in Hawaii, sitting on a beach in Maui,
Sort of Mai
drinking
Tais.
drinking some Mai Tais here soon enough. Hopefully, right? Who knows where we're going with the rest of this future? Because, I don't know. But I have big hopes for the competitive season in 2022. Hoping to see you on there. But again, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure talking to you. And active player turn 0, one initial turn.
Let's time them around.